Thank you so much for being here and joining us for our Max Minutes. I am Marianne Phillips. I am the manager of the research team at Georgia Power's Economic Development Group, but I also have the pleasure of being the Max Data Council chair. So want to, as always, give a special thanks to our anchor investors. Without this group, then we would never have Max. So thank you for your continued support. So again, I'm going to do a quick welcome to everybody, and then I will pass it over to Richie Shapiro, who is the Director of Solutions Development at Employbridge, to talk about the voice of the American workforce. So I am facilitating this morning because I actually found Richie. He presented to the Data Council group a couple months ago, I believe. And it was such a great presentation that Joy and I thought that it would be a really great opportunity to actually have him give his presentation to the entire larger Max Minutes community. We on the Data Council are a group of workforce and economic development research professionals who meet every other month to talk about relevant data and other information and have different relevant speakers. So you do need to be a member of Max to be a part of the Data Council, but if that is you and you would like to join our Data Council, please do let me or Joy know. We would be happy to have you. So with that, thank you again for joining us this morning, and I'm going to let Richie take over to give you a really great presentation about the voice of the American workforce.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. A quick introduction, Richie Shapiro. I've been with Employbridge. September will be 24 years that I've been with Employbridge. We are the nation's largest light industrial staffing provider. So manufacturing, logistics, distribution, hourly positions. We're based in Atlanta, which is fantastic. I get the opportunity to work with our largest customers across the United States and put some workforce solutions in place. Because of our opportunity to work with so many large employers and employers of different size, quite honestly, across the United States, we are in year 19 of what we call the Voice of the American Workforce. We go out and survey a workforce to get information from them that typically isn't found anywhere else. What we notice is that there are a lot of surveys and information out there from executive level, C-level, management level, people that give their perspectives on what's out there and what's happening in the day-to-day workforce. We go to the hourly workers. So we are interested in hearing the perspective of what they have to say. And from that perspective, what we want to do is share that information. So we compile this. It's not important just for us to know what they want us, what they tell us. It's important to share that information organizationally. So this is part of the service that we provide to our client companies, to groups out in the marketplace that want to learn a little bit about what it is that the workforce is sharing with us. So that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. Told you a little bit about that. This is the longest running survey. It's 19 years into it. This just gives you the overview. I'll be able to send this out afterwards as well. But you see the job description, the industry, the focus of where we're at with logistics, manufacturing, transportation. There are some clerical positions, but the vast majority of who we talk to are on the industrial side of the placements. So what do they tell us? They tell us a handful of things that sometimes over the 19 years have not been all that surprising. And sometimes there's some trends and information changes, and it's important for us to be able to share that information as well. So as a general rule, what we saw in this year's survey, as we went out and found out about it, is advancement opportunities are more important than they had been in the past. When you start looking at what's happening in the economy, that is typically pretty indicative of that. So if you were to say in the years past, and I'll share some data with you here in a second, that advancement opportunities had not been as critically important as it been in the past. Workforce stability had always been important, but now people are not as happy with having a job. They're looking for upward mobility within that job as well. The second thing that jumps out at us was we looked at the results were that because that environments are typically better than they've been in the past, that people are treated better in the past, the work conditions are better than they are in the past, that people are not likely to leave because there was a concept of higher pay, and we'll talk about that here in a second, which is always a predominant feature. But now that jobs are better than they were in the past, workers, they want to make sure that they're treated well. And so if they're not treated well, because there are so many environments that people are treated with respect, there's a benefit, not just good pay, but a benefits package, and ultimately like we talked about, opportunity for advancement. People will leave a job if they feel like there's an opportunity for them to rectify some of the things that they're not happy with. They don't feel beholden to the position that they're in. We'll talk a little bit about that. And kind of along those lines, upskilling and training continues to be a high priority for the workforce. So because you are a order picker now, or work on a line, a packing line now, that might not be what you want to do forever. And what's the opportunity to A, increase my skill set, which B, increases my opportunity for higher pay, which C, also makes me more invaluable to the employer that I work for. Those are some of the big takeaways. So what we're looking for in a scenario like this is, these are the types of questions we ask. This is the main part of the survey. You'll see there's a lot of information that I'm going to share with you today. But the main part of the survey we ask is, what's most important to you when you're looking for a job? And then they stack rank these answers. And when you talk to managerial people, people that are salary based, the answers you get are completely different than the answers that you might get when you start talking to people that are hourly, and by definition, many working paycheck to paycheck in order to be able to pay the bills. So I want you to keep that in mind as we start sharing some of the data that's on here, which is, if someone were to ask me what was important, I'm starting to make think health insurance is much more important than it has been in years past. The older I get, the more important health insurance would be. You'll see some of the things that rank on the list are absolutely different to a salaried workforce than they are to an hourly workforce. And that's what I think is be mindful of that information as we go through today, is that our perspective of what we think is most important does not often match up with what the workforce's perspective is. So let's take a look at the first data point that we have. Not surprisingly, 19 years in a row, the most important thing when you're looking for a job is the pay. And so that shouldn't be a surprise. That's probably not a surprise to anybody on this call. When we are filling a position for one of our clients and we have an applicant who is looking for the job, almost always the first question is, what does the job pay? And so that is not something that we anticipate changing at any given time. But surprisingly enough, the percentage of people that answer that as the most important is down from what it had been, which is an interesting trend. First time ever that information is down, that percentage has come down. And you see what happened is advancement opportunities and enjoying the work are second and third accordingly. To the point I made a second ago, health insurance is second to last, right? If you're worried about putting gas in your car and having enough money to put food on your table, health insurance might not be the thing that you're most concerned about. Whereas I would look at that and might make a job determination about taking an opportunity based upon what kind of health coverage I have. So if you see what's at the top of that list, right under the top three, flexible schedule and job security, I want to talk a little bit about that because we'll have an opportunity to talk about those things as well. Flexible schedule is a new concept for us. We are starting to work with a gig workforce now, organizationally, where we have a program where people can pick their schedules that fits their life differently than a traditional 40-hour a week, 50-hour a week schedule. And so you see that is a huge increase over the last couple of years for a flexible schedule. When we say job security, what we mean about job security is really the idea of, are you able to consistently get your hours, and can you get, if you're scheduled to work a 40-hour work week, will you get your 40 hours? Because you can pay somebody, their number one concern, you can pay somebody double what they make, But if they're only working 10 or 15 hours a week because lines are getting shut down and products not coming in, they can't pay their bills. So job security, they see what happens with that when lines get shut down and they get sent home, they struggle to pay their bills that week. The reality is job security isn't losing your job. It's not having enough work to be able to consistently be able to pay your bills. So those are some of the highlights of what we see. Again, pay is not a shocker to us. All 19 years we've been doing that. It's number one. It's gone down from a percentage perspective, but what we see is how you how you treat and how you develop employees when they're there has started to become more and more prominent into what people are looking for a job. Marion, I'm not able to tell if there's any questions or anything coming back. I'll keep going until I hear
Yep.
from you.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
just keep going and we'll do all the questions at the end.
all right, perfect, got it. So this is an interesting one. It kind of reinforces the same way. We ask the same question in a different way. But other than pay increases, what can companies do to earn your loyalty? And look at what's at the top and look what's at the bottom. And so, advancement opportunities pops right up there again. Good benefits, consistent work opportunities. Those are some of the things we talked about. The reason why I want to bring this up, we're going to talk about some of these things here in a second, but I want your eyes to go to a couple things if we can. Providing 401k. When I talk to some of our client companies, it's like, we've got a great 401k package. And I say, someone's making $15 or $16 an hour. They're not concerned about having excess money to be able to put into a 401k. Like, that's not really a big draw. We have some of our clients, which is surprisingly way down on the list for me, from a perspective of providing perks and rewards like earning points and gift cards and things like that. I look at that as the type of thing when I think it's important to have a good work environment, absolutely. But putting a ping pong table in isn't what employees are looking for. Like, that's cool. And having a ping pong table in the break room is pretty neat. But if you look at what's at the top of the list about being understanding of an obligation that comes up in someone's personal life, I like to share this story. When you have, and anyone on this call, typically I'm assuming, but let's assume, when you have to go to the doctor for the day, or when you have to pick up your child from school because they're sick, you take time off, you put in PTO, you get paid to do that. When our workforce misses those days, they don't get paid to do that. So not only do they have to go deal with going to the doctor and staying home with a sick child or things like that, they also don't get paid to do that. When we start thinking about things from the workforce's perspective, you really start to understand why they prioritize some things that we might not prioritize because of some of the benefits and opportunities that we have versus of what they have. And you'll see that with some of the PTO questions we have coming up here in just a second. This is a big one. I talked about flexible work schedule. We asked them, what is your current shift schedule and what shift schedule do you prefer? So most people are working 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. That's typically what the shift is that they are working. And by definition, the shift that they prefer. Interestingly enough, why this is important, I personally would love to work a 4-day, 10-hour shift and have a day off to be able to have things that come up in life and go during that day. Most of our clients don't offer that shift schedule. They are the traditional 8-hour shift, but a lot of people are interested in that. And then you have your more traditional 3 or 4 day, 12-hour shift. So it's 3 on, 3 off, you end up working the weekends and things like that. I'm going to talk about that as we get to the bottom here. And then you get some of the shift work that is kind of a new phenomenon out there that people might be looking for some shift work. One of the big takeaways that we tell our clients is one of the things that you might be able to control is your shift schedules. Now, sometimes your clients dictate that for you. Sometimes the work dictates that for you, but you can control to some degree what shift schedules you set up. Most people want to work days. Most people don't want to work nights, but they'll work that second. Most people don't want to work overnights, and almost nobody wants to work on the weekends. As soon as we talk to a client that has one of two things that happens, a weekend shift specifically, oh, we're going to do a Friday, Saturday, Sunday shift. We're like, ugh, that's going to be tough. People don't want to give up their whole weekends. We're going to do 12-hour rotating shifts. And you might not work for 3 days in a row, but there's when it rotates through, you're going to end up working a Saturday and a Sunday. Ooh, and that's a night shift on top of that. Yikes. When you can start controlling the shifts and understanding that people typically want to work days, they will work nights. And when you are starting to talk about factoring in weekends to that, being mindful of that. Sometimes you cannot control that. There are 24/7 operations out there that we work with all the time, but it takes a different person who is willing to do those shifts. Typically, somebody that has another job. And then you have to learn to allocate for somebody that already has another job, because there's going to be factors that come up with that other person's job. But if I'm working Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, it's not normally by choice. It's my life that has dictated that those are the hours that I can work, and or I've got another job and I work Monday through Thursday through another job, and I can work Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at a second job. So these people like that, unfortunately, never even get a day off. To me, this is always interesting because a lot of it is intuitive, but in the same respect, what can you do about it in order to accommodate to what the workforce is looking for? That being said, let's talk about another big one that we learned in the survey: pay time off versus an increase in pay. In the example I just gave you a couple minutes ago, what you take away from that is when I have to take a day off, I don't get paid, right? When I'm an hourly worker, typically. It's like, you can have the day. Thank you for giving me the heads up that you're going to be off on Friday because you have a prior commitment. I'm granting you that day off, but you're not going to get paid for it. And so what our employees are looking for, typically that we put to work, is there some component of a PTO in place? And if you look at it and you put the cost benefit out there, if you just gave 5 hours of PTO for a year for somebody, that would cost our client companies $900 a year. If you gave them an hour pay increase, that's discernibly more than the 5 days off. And that's what they're asking for. Almost 70% of the people say they would rather have 5 days of PTO than they would have a dollar an hour more. Interesting. And that the reason why we think that is that because while pay is the most important thing, it's also the part that we were talking about. Missing a day or missing hours off that paycheck is much more detrimental to somebody on an hourly workforce than it would be even getting that dollar an hour more. So we find that to be very interesting. And again, something you might be able to control organizationally as you take a look at it. Why did someone leave their last job? We've talked a little bit about why someone is looking for a job. Why did you leave your last job? I didn't think I was treated fairly. I found a job that paid more money. You see some of these areas are going down. Unfortunately, probably as we do our survey for this year, for next year, getting laid off might end up being a higher percentage of than we like it to be. Things are not as great in our industry as I'm preaching to the choir about, as they might have been in some years past. Well, what does that lead to? That might lead to the people that you have there feeling overworked and burnt out. I think most of us can sympathize with that. It's like, we're down headcount. What does that mean to everybody that's still there? It means you're just gonna have to work harder, work more hours. Some people love that. Some people love the overtime. Some people, their life is not conducive to working overtime. We have to be mindful of that. I found a job with a better shift or a schedule, right? We just talked about I was on a weekend shift and I took the job because I had to. I don't want to work the weekends. I'll even work a night shift or I'll work a day shift, but I got to stay off that Saturday and Sunday. I got my child has sports on the weekends, and I've got family functions on Sunday that I go to and things like that. So, specifically people in the South really everyone appreciates their weekends, but the weekends in the South are different than even some of the other geographies that I work with. Kids sports and family commitments are very big in the South, even compared to other parts of the country. But I really want to focus again on the top two, which is I didn't think I was appreciated. I didn't think I was treated fairly. A ping pong table or a gift card doesn't fix that stuff. Like, how you treat people is important. And the thing about that is nobody takes a job because they assume they're going to be treated fairly. That's the assumption, that I'm going to be treated fairly. I'm not coming to you because I think because you're telling me how great your culture is. I don't care how great your culture is until I'm there working, and now I got a great understanding that, like, wow, they treat people fantastic here and they really do listen to my opinions and things like that. Like, we would assume that that's for more of the white collar workforce. The blue collar workforce is concerned about that as well. So I think that's another thing, a mindset that you could go into. Like, how are you engaging with your workforce to make sure that their voices are heard, to make sure that the information that they know about what happens on their day-to-day job functionality is funneled to the people who can impact change. I've often said, myself included, I don't love filling out surveys if nothing ever changes about it. Like, hey, you want me to fill out a survey and tell me X, Y, or Z about my opinion and what I think, and then it falls on deaf ears? I'd almost rather you not do it at all. I'd almost rather you not solicit my information at all. So if you're going to go ask how your workforce is being treated, if you're going to put something in place, then it becomes incumbent upon you to have to do something about with that information that you've shared, that you've
Hey,
gotten
Richie,
from them.
one quick question for you. Are the arrows, that's just like showing the difference between last year's and this year's
That is
survey, is
correct.
that right?
That's
Okay,
correct. That's correct. That's trending down from last year's survey. Correct.
gotcha. Thank you.
So while finding a job with more money is still number two, it's less important than it was in 2024 when we did the survey. Absolutely. Good question. This goes back to where I wanted to take a couple slides to talk to you about is people want new skills. That's what they told us. They want to advance their careers. They know there's money tied to that as well, right? We're going to share that here in a second. But are you willing to invest time for a new skill? Almost every single person says, yes, I'm willing to invest time. Will you do it for free, like on your own dime? Half the people will say they'll do it for their own, they'll do it on their own dime. We have something at Employbridge internally where we have our Better Work Life Academy, where we will pay for it, but they don't get paid to go to take the courses in order to advance their skill set. So it doesn't cost them, but they'll have to do it for free. So you see that's about a 50-50 split. And then you see, well, how many hours a week are you willing to invest in that? And only a handful of people, like, if this becomes a full part-time job where it's over 10 hours a week, like, that's a big commitment. But absolutely, people 1 to 4 hours a week, the vast majority of the answers we get here on 60 some odd percent of our workforce is willing to spend at least 4 hours a week investing the time to do that. So the question becomes, do you have a system in place for people to advance in their careers and learn new skills? And if you do, what does it look like? No, I don't have one. That's important to the workforce. How am I going to get that? Secondarily, if I do have that, do they get paid to enhance their skills? No, they don't. How much time am I asking them to invest on their own to ultimately advance their skill set? Which then ties into, of course, why are you trying to learn a new skill? A vast majority, as you would assume, gain higher pay out of that. If I'm in a warehouse environment and I do pick pack and I might learn how to drive a forklift or to do quality control, if I can learn those skills, if I run a packing line and I can become a machine operator, let alone a machinist, there's pay increases that come from that, right? So that makes sense that would be the reason why people would want to have enhanced skills. But then it goes back to the stability. When you talk about gaining more stability, the more I can do for my company when the time comes, and I can pull orders and drive a forklift, and I can drive two different types of forklifts, not just to sit down. I can also drive a reach. When I learn a skill, I'm more marketable to my employer because I can do more job functionality for them. Then, of course, you're talking about promotional opportunities and the numbers as they start going from there. But the two that jump off the page for you, where we gave them an opportunity to answer multiple reasons. The first reason is, of course, to get more pay. Second, to get more stability, and then look for that promotional opportunity within my industry. Broken down by industry, what skills are people looking for? So, as I mentioned in logistics, if you are looking for something and you are unloading a truck, you might want to learn how to become a forklift operator, because in that environment, that's a realistic skill enhancement that's going to get me more money. We've highlighted automation and robotics technician. I don't have to tell everybody on this call, technology is the wave of the future. We are trying to stay out in front of that. How is technology incorporated into the worlds that we live in? It's really important for us to be mindful of the fact that some jobs are still manual jobs, and some jobs, the use of technology is critically important. I was visiting a client in South Carolina this week, and the client was explaining to us, if they don't have, even though it's a more of an entry level logistics job, if they don't have an opportunity if they don't know how to interface with the technology, be able to run some data reports, things of the such, if they're not comfortable with technology, literally, he said, with the direction we're going, they won't be able to work here anymore. So it's important for us to have those conversations and then provide the opportunities for our workforce to be able to embrace the fact that there is going to be a continued change of embracing technology, and we have to give our workforce the opportunity to learn that new skill set that comes with it as well. All right, last couple slides. So what do we recommend? We recommend that if you don't have an opportunity for a career advancement or upskilling, figure out a way to do that, right? There are ways to do that. We have figured it out organizationally. We're happy to share some of those ideas if you want to have a one-off conversation about some of the things that we're doing. But what we've learned is, if you don't have that opportunity, and that's important to a worker, they'll go find it somewhere else. So you have to be able to find that opportunity for them to be able to say, yes, I absolutely can and will invest in my employee's future. And what does that look like? We talked about the shift work. If you have the opportunity to attract a higher caliber workforce because you're able to change your shift schedules, you might want to consider doing that. We found that to be pretty important through the process as well. And at the end of the day, the one that seems obvious, but how are you treating people? Do they feel appreciated? Are you doing surveys? Are you gaining information from them that you're putting into practice? Are their voices heard? People are interested in sharing their information and then engaging with your workforce in order to be able to do that. Those are tactical things that you could do. The last couple then, as mentioned with the first part, if you don't have an upskilling partner, find an opportunity to be able to do so. I think number 5 is why I've been in the staffing industry for almost 30 years at this point, showing respect and compassion for workers, having an empathy for somebody who's making $13, $15, $17 an hour, that that sometimes a worker of that pay range is literally trying to find change in their car, spare change in their car, to fill up with enough gas in order to get to work for that day. Somebody told me one of these times, and I was guilty of this in one of the conversations I had, and I'm blessed to be able to say this about myself. But when was the last time that I went to go fill up my gas tank and I didn't top it off and fill it up all the way? And the answer is, that's what I always do. But not when you only have $6 to be able to fill up your gas with, and that's all you have. Having an understanding and a compassion for the workforce, looking at things from their perspective and the lives that they lead, makes us much more tolerant and understanding about some of the things that you can choose to do as you engage with your workforce. Then the last one, wouldn't be fair for me to go through this whole conversation of not talking about wages. It's the most important thing. If your wages aren't competitive, all the other stuff we're talking about right now, I don't want to say it's not that they don't matter. They matter a whole lot less. Like legitimately competitive wages is the most important thing, because if you don't have to be the highest paying. We say this all the time. You don't have to be the highest paying, but you got to be fair. If you can live within that 50th to 75th percentile of pay for the area for the jobs that you have, people are fine with that. But you can't be in the 25th percentile. People will leave for you if you're in the 25th percentile. We can run some wage data analysis for you. We have it basically at our fingertips for all the different job functionalities that we run. And that is very specific to a market. North Atlanta, West Atlanta, South Atlanta, the pay is similar, but it's different in each of those markets. So as you look at having competitive wages, there's ways about going to do that. Some of the information I have found to be more reliable than some of the other information that's out there. And absolutely, we can help you with that information, but making sure your wages are competitive as well. So that's really the highlight of the information. I wanted to make sure that we left enough time for any questions that we had, but the first half an hour was to be the dialogue. And now if there's any Q&A that comes from that as well.
Thank you, Richie. Really great information. Thank you so much for putting all that together in the presentation. This was the second time hearing it, and I felt like I learned even more again. So I have some questions to kick us off, but then please, everybody, continue to put some questions. I see a couple already coming through the chat or in the Q&A, and we will have plenty of time to address as many of those as possible. I know you mentioned that you've been doing this survey now for 19 years. Have you noticed any changes since COVID that have really kind of changed from, I feel like that was such a big
Yeah.
mark, especially in some of the industries that you're talking about.
So the one of the big changes from COVID, a upper manager that I work with forever with our organization said, if you don't change pay, you will be forced to change pay outside of what you want to do. Either there will be strikes, there will be unionization, the government's going to tell you to change your pay. And what happened was COVID fixed that. So when I was in this industry in Atlanta, a forklift driver made $10 an hour. Forever. Like, how are they still making $10 an hour? And then they made $11 an hour and $12 an hour. And our clients were like, I make $12 an hour. And I was like, you drive a forklift. It's one of the most important skill sets you have in your facility. And then COVID hit and pay rates started going up $3 and $4 and $5 and $6 an hour because nobody wanted to go to work. Right. Like
Right.
we were all scared to go to work at that point. So what happened was COVID changed pay. So now that pay is in alignment, what I was talking about with being in the 50th to the 75th percentile, many companies have made those changes at this point. Mm-hmm. And so now pay, that's why you see sometimes the arrows going down on pay a little bit, because like I'm a forklift driver and I make $13 an hour. Like, gosh, dog it. I make $13 an hour as a forklift driver, but now I make $18 an hour. Do I want to make more? Sure, I want to make more, but I make $18 an hour. I don't make 13 anymore. So to me, COVID, the biggest change we saw was the right sizing of pay across the board. But the mindfulness I'll give of that as well. Changing pay is not a one-time event. Like you changed pay this year. What are you doing next year? Because as soon as you fall behind, what ends up happening is when everybody else around you went from $16 an hour to $17 an hour and you chose not to, and the next year they went from 17 to 18, you going from 16 to 17 doesn't help. You're still behind the curve at that point. So it's changing pay is not a one-time event. If you want to look at that yearly or bi-yearly or whatever it is, but if you haven't looked at your pay schedules in the last year or two or three, that's probably something to be mindful of as well.
That makes sense. So a question from our audience. So what are entry-level IT jobs that are open to hourly workers if they're willing to grow that skill set?
I will honestly get some answers back on that, and I'll tell you why. It's not specifically my area of specialty, so I don't want to answer something that's not my specific area of specialty. What I will tell you is what I know about IT is that the variability of skills and experience needed is so widely changes from job description to job description that one company, this is probably probably a fair assessment to make for IT and or any other job description. What I consider entry level might not be what somebody else considers entry level. So as we're still looking at that information, if I could get some clarity on what entry level is defined, I can go back to one of our Employbridge as a family of organizations. And we have a professional division that I don't work as closely with because I'm on the supply chain side. So I absolutely can answer that question, but I wouldn't want to speculate on what that is. But the clarity of what entry level means, I think, is an important component of that conversation.
Gotcha. So we had a question from the audience. Do you have any general demographic information you can share about who was surveyed in terms of the age, the sex, race, or ethnicity? And then also, what were the top occupation titles? If you can share that as well.
So from a demographic standpoint, the answer is yes. It's the workforce
All
as a
around.
whole. It's
Yeah.
the workforce as a whole, right? So, and now mind you, it's all across the United States, those answers that we shared about today. They are not regional. We can break them out regionally. We can also break them out very specifically. We do this survey for our client companies as well. If we can get at least 50 surveys or more within a one spot for one of our clients, we can do this exact survey for our client companies as well. Quite honestly, we'd probably be willing to do it even if we weren't partnering from a
Mhm.
staffing perspective as well. So, so what I have found the demographics to be in what we find, it is typically a younger demographic from an age perspective, probably the 18 to 50 range is probably predominant of what we're talking about. When it comes to male and female, I will tell you that's pretty much of a split for us organizationally when we look at our demographics. It's very now when that comes to job description standpoint, that changes. Primarily, primarily males do the heavier lifting jobs or forklift operation or heavy machinery type of jobs. Females traditionally do line work, packing jobs, things like that. But again, that from a standpoint of that's a very generic answer that I gave because one of your clients could tell you my very best forklift driver is a female who's 22 years old. You're like, right? So predominantly skill sets are what I would call hourly workers. So on a manufacturing side, what we typically address is packers, machine operators, machinists. If we look at logistics, it's typically uh, shipping, receiving, forklift operators, pick pack. As we look in some of the hospitality positions we fill, we have a division that focuses on that. It's when we talk about hospitality, it's wait staff, things like that. We have contracts with some of the biggest ballparks throughout the United States, so concessionaires. But honestly, organizationally, that's a very small percentage of what we do. Logistics and manufacturing, this answer to what we just saw, largely
Yeah.
hourly jobs within a manufacturing or a logistics environment.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, any plans to survey the number of workers who are comfortable with technology? Adding that in there.
Sure. Because we could ask whatever questions we want in the survey. That's the beauty of
Right.
it being our survey, right? So, yeah, if I could get some guidance on specifically, see, for us, it's what we can do as we put these surveys together so we can learn and so that we can share those learnings. That's really why we do this. Like we can make some of these impacts that we talked about today, but we're employing the workforce. It's our client companies that are responsible for changing wages and how people are treated and the shift work and all that kind of stuff. So if there's information that especially from a training and a technology standpoint that we can gain preference on, absolutely, since that's such a big push in the last 2 or 3 or 5 years. Those were questions we never even asked
Right.
10 years ago. They didn't, it wasn't even part of the conversation that we're having right now. So yeah, anything specific that could come through, to love to get some insight on what would be good, valuable information for that as well.
Great. So you've mentioned a number of times that, kind of the people being treated fairly. Do you have a sense
Yeah.
of why they're feeling this way or some examples of how the people might be considered mistreated?
So where my brain goes automatically, and I probably talk to 5 to 10 customers a week on a given week throughout the United States. So that's my perspective of what I'm dealing with right now. It is a vicious cycle that I'm getting ready to describe. So I understand that. But what happens is turnover in the jobs that we're talking about right now is very high. They're high turnover positions. And so what's happened with our client companies is they feel the brunt of that. And so unfortunately, their leaders and supervisors out on the floor have lost tolerance for the workforce because it's a high turnover to some degree, sometimes many times not as accountable workforce, not showing up to work, showing up late kind of thing. And what happens is when you bring new employees in, those new employees feel the brunt of the client company's training and onboarding and retention activities. They're like, they don't want to invest in those people because they've been burned so many times over. It's like, I think this is going to be a really good employee. So you pour into that employee, and then next week that employee stops showing up to work. And so they've been conditioned to not invest as much time or energy or effort into treating people well because they look at them as for us very specifically, oh, it's just a temp. Oh, it's just a temporary, it's just a temp. That mindset is not just a temp, it's for every new hire that comes in. It's like, I don't have faith that this person's going to make it, so I don't give my full effort into engaging and onboarding them. So that becomes a vicious cycle. When you do that, what does the new hire think? Well, I don't want to work here. Like, they're not investing any time or effort in me, and so I don't want to work here. And so we have to break that cycle at some point in time. Now, breaking that cycle is important, but then it's incumbent upon the workforce to not do the knucklehead things that they tend to do, to not show up to work. Like, be communicative, be responsible. If you're not going to make it, just don't not show up to work today. Call somebody and tell us that you're not going to be there. Like, the things that typically happen need to stop happening. So that's our responsibility to coach our workforce on some of those things as well.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So we had someone who mentioned that they were surprised to see that supervisor was not a relatively strong reason for leaving or looking for a job. Do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think I'm going to reinforce the answer that I just gave of why I think
Yeah.
that is that I think people are just used to, like, for me, my manager is really important to
Right.
me,
Yeah. I was wondering
right?
if that was going to be, if it felt like more like for an office worker, especially, I feel like
Right.
that is a big one.
For me and for a white collar workforce, I think that's really important,
Yeah.
right? But for a blue collar worker or hourly worker, what we find is, to be fair, there's a lot of bad workers out on the production floor out there, and a lot of bad, and so how people get promoted in many of the client relationships that we're talking about right now is that they're there every day, they produce well, they have a generally a good attitude, and because you do the job well, I'm going to make you the manager, I'm going to make you the supervisor, I'm going to make you the manager. And they have no people skills, and the problem is no one develops them to gain those skills. That's the environment most people are in, and and so the hourly workforce has learned to tolerate that. It's like,
Mm.
yeah, I know that they're probably, they were just working next to me last week, and now the boss, and all of a sudden, like, I know Joe, he's a decent enough guy, and he's probably going to treat me some sort of way, and I can just deal with it. Like, it's been a conditioned way to say that I don't think my supervisor is going to invest in me. I don't think my supervisor is going to really lead me. And so I'm just used to that. Where if I got that and my direct manager was that way, I'd be like, what the heck? Like,
Right. Yeah.
I need some guidance in the career development, all this stuff, and I don't get that. That's much more important to me than I think it is to an hourly worker.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, so a methodological question from me. So
Yeah.
how do you find the workers to take this survey? Is it from your clients or are you finding
Yes.
other associations, things like that?
So it's our workforce and our clients' workforce. That's where we
Gotcha.
go get it from. So we spend the better part of, I don't want to make this up, I feel like it's like 6 weeks going out there and compiling the data. And so when employees are coming into the office and they're looking for a job. That's why we have so much information on when you're looking for a job, because you're coming in looking for a job. So during the compilation time frame, we're asking them these questions. They'll fill it out for us. When you're in the office, we'll give you, snack and a drink to fill out this
Yeah.
information for us. Thank you for taking your time to do that. And we go to our client companies and we say, hey, listen, we without getting into crazy details here, but we sit on site at our clients. It's our on-site program at our large clients. We have about 400 or so of those across the United States, where we have an Employbridge representative on site with our client, helping manage the workforce. That's a lot easier to go get that information. We're part of our client's operation at that point.
Yeah.
And so gaining that information directly from our clients and our clients' workforce is an easy way to compile some of this information as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I know we already kind of hit the COVID question, but another one came through. Over the years, what trend has struck you as the most intriguing and why?
What trend? I would tell you, it doesn't surprise me. Like I said, I've been doing this since 1996. So it doesn't surprise me how important it is on how you treat people. Like, that's not a surprising trend for me. That's relatively stayed at the top of the list. I think the trend for me that really was eye-opening more than anything else is the preference of work. Meaning, what job do I have? What shift do I work? Like, can I get my enough hours in order? So the fact that is the way that our workforce thinks means to be that we have to think that same way. So next week will be July 4th.
Yep.
I'm going to get paid
Yep.
on
Me
July
too.
4th, right? Many of our workers will not get paid next Friday because it's a holiday, and there are stipulations, and there are some of our clients where we share in some of the costs of stuff like that, but many of our workers will not get paid next Friday. And so the trend to be mindful of those and our clients changing the way that they operate under that parameter, I think for me has what we're talking about is working. I work with a freight forwarder in South Atlanta, where they are top of the line for us when it comes to the employees. It's a long-term contingent workforce we have out there, about 70 workers, 9 holidays, 2 weeks of vacation. Like, they pay for a lot of that. And they're like, this is the way we're going to operate here. And they are the gold standard, one of the gold standards that I work with. They have mindfully changed the way that they operate their organization. The trend is to do more and more of that, because just because somebody's a contingent worker or temporary worker doesn't mean that you treat them any sort of way, but
Right.
also that you don't like, they're an important part of our client's business. So you have to make sure that they are happy and retained and accounted for as well. I think to me that
Yeah.
would be the answer.
Yeah, and that's good. I mean, that's what you want, right? You do all this survey work and you want positive things for the industry to come out of it for the workers. So I'm glad to
Right.
hear that. We got
Yeah.
another great question. Any ability to track an individual respondent over time, or are you just trying to, because you are working with some of the same clients, I imagine, but
Fair. I'll have to ask that question, because there are some of our clients, as I mentioned, if we get at least 50 respondents, we'll do it for any one place. That probably is the closest we come to right now to see how a client has changed over time, specifically to a client. But it's an interesting concept that says, if you get it down to the micro level of somebody that 3 years in a row has filled out the same information for us for the same 3 years, are they answering the question the exact same way? The answer is probably not. And therefore that's an interesting takeaway. So I'll be mindful of that as I talk to internally to the group for us that handles this process.
yeah, and then it'd be interesting to see too, especially with the turnover being so high. I imagine it would be kind of hard unless they
It would
have
be
to
a little
just
hard.
be
Correct.
staying at the
Yeah.
same company over the period of time. But I agree with and that question came from one of our data council members. And
Yeah.
that's another good one too. Has the company that offered the better benefits seen a significant improvement in retention and productivity?
Retention. Yes, I could. So it's an interesting fact of how we track data metrics that we have. retention is an easy thing for us to measure.
Right.
Productivity is for our clients to measure, and for us to then go ask about the productivity of the workforce, because those are their metrics. And not to say we don't have them, but they need to share them back with us. Retention is a us metric,
Okay.
so it's easy for us to see what happens with retention, especially the client like I was just talking about. I think that's a reference point of the one on the freight
Yep.
forwarder in South Atlanta. Our retention there is dramatically better than it is with many of our customers. The pay isn't even that much better than it is with other customers, but it's that workforce there knows that they have opportunities for increased PTO and things like that that they don't have at many other places. So our retention there is dramatically better. I actually have a business review with that client in 2 weeks. I'm gonna, now that question comes up, I'll be mindful to ask about the productivity side of that, what they've seen.
Great.
Yeah.
So one thing that did not come up when I heard this last presentation that I was intrigued about was that you had mentioned that Southern workers, particularly valued their, weekend time more than some of the others. Are there any other region specific, especially specific to the South, that you can share?
Um, yeah, I think we have to be mindful in the South that the pace of life is slower in the South than it is in other parts of the United States. And that's indicative of the workforce that's here as well. Meaning, when I talk to a customer that comes typically from the Northeast, let's say,
Mhm.
um, I know soon enough out of the what's going I'm going to hear out of their mouth is, oh, the workforce down here is that everyone moves so slow and stuff like that. It's like you're falling right into the stereotype of what
Right.
happens in the South, but
Yeah.
that's their perspective, right? So I have to be mindful of the fact that's their perspective. I will tell you that what I hear often is that, again, the pace of life in the South is so much more balanced than it might be in other places that you have to be mindful of that. Like when I work out west or in the Midwest, I mean, Midwest is very family centric as well, I would say. But in the Northeast and places like that, like it's not so much about going to the dance recital and the baseball game on the
Right.
weekend and stuff like that. It's like, no, I can't come in on Saturday because I've got family commitments. And that is a predominance in the South. I took advantage of that. My children were raised in the South as well. So I took advantage of that same thing. I think that to me, that feels a little different in the South than it does. The expectation is in other places like, yeah, I need you to come in on Saturday. And that's the expectation is you're going to be here
Yeah.
on Saturday. Right. So in the South, I find it to be a little bit more accommodating for things like that.
Great. Let's check and see. We will be sharing all of the slides. Richie will get that for you afterwards. We also have been recording this, so we will share that as well. I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up. Richie, thank you so much for this presentation, for the chat afterwards. I learned a lot, as I mentioned, and I'd even heard this presentation before. Really valuable insight into the workforce. And I know a lot of us on this call are office workers, so it is really interesting, especially for me, to really understand the difference there. So I'm going to share my screen one more time to wrap us up. And I know we just got some questions kind of funneling in. We will join. I will make sure to collect any of those last questions that have come through in the last couple minutes to make sure that those get answered for y'all. Share my slide. Okay. So yeah, just one more last thing, a couple last things about Max. If you are not already a member of Max, we do encourage you to become one. There's a number of different ways to get connected, as you can see here, especially the Max Data Council, which I'm giving a special shout out to. We have speakers like Richie. It was actually kind of a pleasant surprise that he was actually based in Atlanta. I didn't know that. I found him through, I believe, JLL in a report that they put out, and I just thought his information was really interesting. So I just kind of cold reached out and said, hey, can you come talk to our data council? So I'm always happy to have you. But as you can tell, there's a number of different ways to get involved in Max. Feel free to go ahead and grab this screen share right here if you are interested in joining. We do already have some Max minutes scheduled in the future. July 25th, our next one, Joseph Santoro from the Georgia Transportation Alliance will be speaking. And then August 29th, Jenny Taylor from Goodwill of North Georgia. She is also our Max Board of Directors. She's going to be doing a Workforce Development 101 presentation that she developed, which I'm really excited about as well. And we also have Max Talks and Max Academy, other Max events coming up. We'll have a Max Talks in August, which we're in the process of scheduling, and a Max Academy in September. So please do keep on the lookout for that information. And finally, again, thank you so much to the anchor investors with us. Without your generous support, none of this would be possible. So with that, enjoy your weekend and look forward to seeing you at another Max event in the future. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, everybody.